welcome to episode 2 of Meta Shift, my series where I discuss changes that are happening in the PvE meta, try to explain why, and hopefully make some sense of it all for you. The first episode we talked about raids, but this one will be about fractals. In the recent patch, big changes occurred in fractals. First, toughness scaling was removed, and toughness and HP were normalized so that, in theory, power and Condi builds will be roughly equal in killing power and capability. The second change was the removal of two really annoying, non-popular instabilities, Boon Thieves, which made certain classes that rely on boons to be not only bad, but actively detrimental to the success of your party. The second change was the addition of new instabilities, most importantly toxic trails, which adds an aura to enemies that hits with a bit of direct damage and a bit of condition damage. It can be mitigated by max meleeing the enemy and by endeavoring not to move them too much. So, with that said, how have these changes shaken out in the meta? The first big change is that Necros are either really, really good now or really, really bad now. And I'll explain what I mean by that. The old meta was heavy on Condi builds, either favoring a 4 Necro, 1 healer setup or a quote-unquote balanced team of 3 Condi Necros, 1 Condi PS, and 1 Condi Druid. Either way, Necros were very present in the meta. These party compositions actually are still very strong, and despite the reduced toughness of the mobs in Fractals, I still would contend that 4 Necros and 1 healer might be the best composition if all you care about is the most easy, face roll, non-difficult build you can find and don't care about speed. When every group was some variation of ranged Condi DPS, it made adding a random Necromancer off the LFG no problem, because even if they were bad, it was hard to tell, and how easy the composition made the Fractal content, and how the class had such high synergy with the rest of the team, they just blended in. The big problem is now there is significantly more build variety. Not every Druid will be Condi. Not every PS Warrior will be Condi. There will be Chronos, there will be Guardians, there will be Ellie's Thieves, and since power builds are perfectly viable and in many cases optimal now, if you have 4 power builds, adding a random Necro off the LFG is not going to provide much value to your team. Your power builds will tear through the trash mobs before the Necro can do much of anything, and in boss fights, having 1 Necro sitting at range while everyone else is meleeing is simply a waste of a party slot, and not much different than having a random Barebow Ranger in your group from the days of yore. Even worse is the opposite, having 3 Necros and a healer, but then having a random, say, Power Revenant join your team. Having 1 melee character in an all otherwise ranged DPS group is suicidal. The 1 meleeer will get killed over and over again by the mobs, as he will have 100% of the aggro in every fight. It's anti-synergy. What this means is that we are in a state where you really have 2 options: ranged Condi or power melee. A mix of the two is fairly suboptimal and will result in toxicity in pugs and unnecessary headaches if you try it. My advice is, if you're forming a group or a pug, keep in mind what type of team you want to run and make sure you focus on synergy with each other. The next and most awesomest change I'd say of this is that Guardians and Chronomancers are definitely back in Fractals. The removal of Boon Thieves was exactly what Guardians and Chronos wanted to hear. Now that Boon Thieves is gone, perma-quickness in Fractals, thanks to the Chrono, along with the power builds, will speed up boss kill time so much that, honestly, the first time you play a full power DPS team with a Chrono, you'll be pretty shocked at how quickly everything dies. Additionally, Guardians were really not wanted in T4 Fractals because of Boon Thieves. The big reason for that was if the Guardian made retaliation, as they can easily do just passively by putting down a lot of light fields, a boss or a mob would steal the retaliation and the team would nuke itself by DPSing the boss with retaliation up. It was actually detrimental to your team having a Guardian on the team. you could kill yourself so easily that, especially in pugs, it just made no sense to bring a Guardian. One additional thing I wanted to bring up about Guardians is that in a lot of respects in Fractals, Guardian is a lot better than Revenant. Revenant was preferred in the Boon Thieves world because it reapplied the boons rapidly that were stolen by the mobs. If your Fury got stolen, the Revenant was constantly pumping out new stacks of Fury, so your team would not lose the Furies. There was no loss there. Sure, it sucked when the mobs had Fury, but your team didn't lose any DPS since the Revenant just immediately reapplied it. However, stolen boons are no longer a problem, and Fury can once again be provided by Ellie's pre-stacking Might, by Druids swapping pets and using a Tiger pet, by a Con DPS warrior in your group, even a power group, by the way, very good, using For Great Justice, and the Guardian bringing Feel My Wrath, and the Sword Symbol. All of these things that previously weren't really reliable at making Fury because they were liable to be stolen by the mobs and then would be on really long cooldowns and couldn't be reapplied are now good again. So that means that Revenant took a hit, and it made Guardian, which kind of competed with Revenant for a spot, in a much better place, relatively speaking. Guardian also has great CC, like the Revenant, and they have similar DPS, and Guardian has a better ranged option if need be with the Scepter. And Guardian has better, more reliable projectile reflex. Simply put, in many cases now, Guardian just drastically outperforms Revenant in Fractals, and I think a lot of people who main Revenant are probably not going to want to hear that, but it is in fact the case. And I'm sure a lot of Guardian mains will be happy to notice that their services are definitely wanted a bit more. And one of the last changes I wanted to mention is that Druids got even better. Groups have seen the benefits of Druids in Fractals for a while now, since the revamp. But the instability changes that went in benefit having a Druid even more. Essentially, with toxic trails and the increased amount of the social awkwardness instability, there is just a lot more ambient damage being thrown out. Yes, I know someone is going to say that technically all of those things are avoidable, and it shouldn't matter, but we all know that in practice you will take damage every now and then from toxic trails and social awkwardness, unless you play with 5 robots who are all perfect. This is where having a healer is great. Having a Druid in your group to counter these mechanics, as well as burst heal when you take big hits from a boss, is very, very useful. The increasing amount of groups using power-based builds with Scholar Runes will also benefit from the Druids, as well as the Druid DPS buffs being very, very valuable for power groups by increasing their front-load burst damage capabilities. Simply put, doing a Toxic Trail and Social Awkwardness Fractal with a good Druid is a night and day difference from trying to do it with no healer whatsoever. It's actually so much better to have a Druid in your group that I honestly wouldn't bother to run a Social Awkwardness or Toxic Trails Fractal without one. I would say they are 100% integral in the meta. So that's it, guys, for this episode. I hope you guys liked it, and that I hope it was helpful.